What's up, guys? Ben Pollack here. We're back to our regular scheduled unfucking. We're going to get back into talking about how much accessory work should you include in your power building program. So last time we talked about what types of exercises you should include. This time we're going to talk, okay, you pick those exercises, how much should you do in a given workout? So when we're talking about your powerlifting program and talking about supplemental exercises that are for balance, for muscular balance, for injury prevention, I talked about the 80-20 rule. And I said that 20% of your effort on a given day should be spent towards supplemental exercises. That doesn't mean volume, doesn't mean intensity, it just means kind of effort, which is a little bit holistic. It's a little bit difficult to judge, and if you've done the full program, you have a little bit better sense of how to judge that. But this 80-20 rule, it really doesn't hold when we're talking about power building, when hypertrophy is either a main or a secondary goal. And that's because if you think back to part one, we talked about how volume is very important. You have to get that more volume in, and generally with 20% of your effort, you can't get quite enough. So we're going to talk about how do you do it. To answer that question, I'm going to take a step back, and I'm going to talk in general about how you should determine how much work you should do on a given day. I'm a graduate student at the University of Texas, and I work with Dr. Terry Todd. And if you've never heard of Terry Todd, he's a legend in the strength game. So he was a national champion Olympic weightlifter back in the 60s, one of the very first national champion powerlifters. He has coached some of the most successful lifters in history, including Lamar Gant, Bob Peoples, Mark Henry, Jan Todd. So he knows his shit. And Terry has told me more than once that the secret to being a good coach is being able to have that eye to determine just how much work somebody has to do on a given day. And it's hard to quantify, but generally, if you're watching somebody train, you can just kind of tell, okay, they've hit their limit. And when you're coaching yourself, it's a little bit more difficult to be objective like that, but there are some tools that you've probably heard of that you can use. Now, at our level, I really strongly recommend, right, if you're still struggling to figure out how to program for yourself, I really strongly recommend that you just stick to the plan. Because if you plan properly, you're probably going to be doing about the right amount of work, and you don't have to be perfect. Once you get to more advanced levels, you kind of have a feel for when to stop. And Mike Tuchscherer has done a great job of quantifying that with what he calls fatigue stops that you combine with rate of perceived exertion. That more or less it comes down to the point when you start getting weaker in a workout, it's time to stop. And I think that's a really good rule of thumb. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. That's for powerlifting. For hypertrophy work, it's not quite the same because remember, our primary goal isn't strength. Our primary goal is size, and that's not directly related to the work we're doing in the gym. It's close, but it's not directly related like powerlifting is. And so to determine how much work you should do on a given day, I really like the idea of chasing the pump. You've probably heard the idea that, well, you know, the pump doesn't really matter, just like soreness doesn't really matter, it's not a great indicator, and that's true. The pump by itself is not the be-all, end-all of gaining size, but it's a great indicator of, okay, am I training this muscle productively? Am I activating the muscle that I want to do? Am I doing the right amount of volume? Is this productive in terms of muscular growth? So here's how it kind of looks in a given workout. Let's say you're doing barbell curls, and let's say you do your first set, and you know it's a super light set, just to warm up, and you're pumping out, and you start to get a little blood flow, and you can kind of feel it going, and it feels kind of good, but not great. You're still a little rusty, and so you go up in weight maybe a little bit, and then you crank out another set. And these are pretty high rep sets, right? If you've done the programs, you know I recommend sets of 10 to 20. So you're cranking out your second set, you get a better pump, and you keep going and going, and pretty soon you got this massive pump going on, right? Your arms are feeling fucking swole, you're looking in the mirror, showing off. And then you do another set, and you're like, well, you know, it's not really any better, I don't feel any warmer, I don't feel any stronger, and my pump's not getting any bigger, it's just kind of the same. And maybe do another set after that, and it's the same. And then maybe another set, and you feel like, oh shit, now I'm kind of getting flatter, maybe my arms are starting to hurt a little bit, nothing's really happening. That is more or less the point where you want to stop and call it. And in my experience, that really only takes 2 to 3 hard sets, hard high rep sets, and you should more or less get there. Now, it's not including warm-ups, so let me be very clear that you can't just do a set with the bar and then a set with 25 pounds and then 45 pounds and expect to be done. You have to warm up, so you're working pretty hard. But once you reach that point, there's not a huge point in continuing to train because if you again think back to part one, we really have to consider recovery. when we're trying to do this, because all this supplemental work that you're doing for hypertrophy, that is spending recovery resources that you could be spending on your strength work, and you really have to conserve those. If you spend too much recovery resources on your supplemental work, remember, think back to this 80-20 rule, spend too much on the supplemental work, you're not going to be able to feel fresh enough to go do your strength work on the next day, right? If I'm cranking out sets of triceps after my bench day on Monday, and then I'm supposed to bench again on Thursday, if I'm still sore, if I'm still fatigued, if I'm not in that supercompensation phase yet, then I'm probably not going to have a great workout. My strength training is not going to be as productive, even if my size training was pretty good. Now, we're talking strictly in the context of power building, where strength and hypertrophy are both our goals. If our goal is strictly related to hypertrophy, if we just want to do bodybuilding, this is not a good rule of thumb to follow. Because if you're having trouble getting a pump in your lats, it's probably because your lats are underdeveloped, right? And so you're going to have to do more work in order to bring those lats up to par. And so you're going to have to be creative, and you're going to have to say, well, maybe I got to do drop sets or intensifiers or different exercises or whatever the case may be. But with power building, we're really just trying to bring up those weak parts. We're not trying to have phenomenal lats, we just want to have balanced lats. And so that's why you can get away with a little bit less work and save some recovery resources for your strength training. One more thing I want to mention when it comes to chase and pump. I think this idea is why intra-workout nutrition is stressed so heavily in the bodybuilding world. When you're doing this not heavy-ish, high rep training, high volume training, you're depleting glycogen much faster than when you're doing powerlifting and you do a set of 5 and then you wait 20 minutes and do another set of 5. You're going to deplete those glycogen stores much faster. And once you've depleted your glycogen, your pump's going to die out pretty quickly. So if you have some type of intra-workout recovery, it can help you sustain that, help you do more work and still continue to get a better pump. And it will help your recovery. I promise you, it will help your recovery. Obviously, I'm sponsored by Granite. I really like their recovery factor. I do not think that's necessary at all. I think you can get away with freaking Gatorade. You can get, the cheap-ass carb powder at GNC, whatever the hell you want. But I think that getting some type of fairly fast-acting sugar, carb, hopefully along with some BCAAs or EAAs, is a really useful tool when you're trying to do power building or bodybuilding. So that kind of should give you a very broad idea of, okay, I know more or less how to choose which exercises. I know more or less how much of each exercise to do. In the next installment, we're going to talk about, okay, how do I incorporate this into my plan itself, right? How do I make my split? How do I do the sets, the reps, the days? How do I work this into my bench, my squat, my deadlift, blah, blah, blah. If you have questions about this in particular, though, please leave them in the comments below and let me know, because I'd like to make sure that we're all on the same page before we go on to the next lesson. A couple other things that I want to touch on real quick, completely unrelated to this shit. Remember that you can go download the full program, at least get the free program, sign up for that so you can kind of follow along, get a feel for how I like to program things. The link's in the description below. Please also make sure, if you're not subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed. I'm trying to reach as many people as possible. I'd really like to be able to do this, make videos more often, but if I can't reach a lot of people with it, it's really difficult to do that. So I would consider that a favor. If you are subscribed, thank you very much, and I'll look forward to seeing you all next time.